Hello, today I'm going to record a video for the demo of how to define questions for particular intent and how we can detect the particular entities, and based on that um, how those questions should be sent to bot, and bot will ask those questions to user if we don't have that values in particular utterance, and then capture those all inputs of user and then send it to a backend dialog and retrieve the results. So let's do that. Let me increase the fonts a little bit. So I'm going to highlight what process we'll be doing. So first of all, we will have some utterances from Lewis. So let's define utterances in Lewis. In the second step, we will train and publish the Lewis app. I have already done these all steps, so we are not going to do this in this video. That is not the purpose of this video, but I'm just going to highlight these steps, so whenever you are going to do this, you may have idea what you need. Then I have one separate branch called Mithul on our bot repo, so we'll be running that branch locally. Actually, I cannot deploy this bot right now. I need to do a separate deployment, as it can break other running bots. And also I have one other local branch or backend that I haven't deployed because I made some changes in the config. So I don't know, might it can break the current running bot as well. So we will have a backend local branch called mithul slash user input bot or something. I'll just correct it. Let me check. Okay, so branch name is bot user input capture. Okay, so these are the initial things that we need, and in the second step, let's call it step 1 and this step 2. So step 1 is not, we are going to do this in this video. I already did that setup. In the second step, the first thing that will be defining questions for particular intent. So say I want to find a place, so first I need to figure out like what questions I need to ask user, like what information should I have to execute particular dialog. So say I want to find a place which has a burger as a menu item, and which should be a restaurant, and it should be in Denver. So basically we need 3 items, like place type, that is restaurant, then a product, that is burger, and the second last thing is place, that is Denver. So in this demo we are going to gather these 3 inputs from the user, then we will send this information to our dialog, which will execute this which will execute the template with these inputs, and it will return whatever data we have to the bot. So send this information to the backend. It will execute to a template. Okay, so another thing that we need to keep in mind is we can have different type of utterances. So there is possibility like either user will not have this all information in the first utterance. So say I will just say like I'm hungry. That means we need to ask all these 3 questions. The second case will be like find me restaurant. In that case we have restaurants available as a place type, but we have to ask another 2 information. or I can say find me burger restaurant, so we need to ask just place. Or I can say like find me burger restaurants in Denver. In that case we have all this information available, so all we need to do is just execute this second step, right? But we will go over this all of the things step by step. So let me explain a little bit code structure that right now we are using. So uh, let me go to the backend. Okay, so here I have one app called Mito, and we have one intent that is defined. And if we check the utterances for that intent, so I have various utterances which is forming like all of the user input. So I have like I want to eat, so nothing is defined, so user is just saying like I want to eat something. Or this is like find me cafe, so we have a place type. Or this is like find me burger restaurant, so we have two information. Or it can be like find store in Denver, so we have place type and place. And in the last one, like I'm saying find me burger restaurant in Denver, so we have all information. So all these kind of different utterances are already defined. The app is already published, so we don't need to worry about that. And now what we need to do is like this app is already available on backend. We need to define for particular intent. So we have these different entities, and these all entities are being used in different intents, but we need to define which entities are required for this intent. So say like find place is recognized as the intent, then what entities should be present, or if it is not present, then what we should ask to user. So that's what we'll be defining in edit question. So I will go to edit question and I'll start defining my questions. And keep in mind that is important how you are defining your questions in particular sequence, because in that sequence these questions will be asked. So let's add our first question. That will be for let's say place type. So I just define what kind of place you are looking for, and I will try to give some hint to user, like example restaurant, cafe, and the selected entity I have selected is destination place type. Now I will add my second question, and in that I will ask for, let's say, product. So I'll just say what you want to eat, and I will give hint like burger, coffee, or sandwich. And let's define the third question, that is destination address. I will say where you want to eat, for example Denver, Bethesda. So this is a very basic functionality, yet we are going to even add a support for like this question is optional, or ideally this thing can come from some inbuilt variables as well, like this place thing that cannot be required. We can detect the user's let and long, and it can be directly injected, so we don't need to ask these questions at all. But right now we will try to keep it simple, and let's hit save. I'm running this on local. It said some weird problem, it is not displaying this entity, so but it is stored in database, so that's not a problem. So now we have defined our questions, and the next thing that we need to do is like go to our bot. So let me explain how this is working, or okay, just leave it right now. Let's stop our bot. Then now let's define our dialog. So I have already predefined dialog somewhere. Remember one thing, if you are adding a new dialog that you have deleted previously, you need to rerun bot, because whenever bot runs, it fetches all of the dialogues from the backend and defines waterfall model for them. So if you have defined any new dialog, or say you have added any new dialog, then you need to restart your bot. So let's set our dialog. Let's clear it out. Let's copy this and paste it. So what we are doing is we are recognizing place type as a place type from the entities we are getting. Then we have a product that we are storing in a product and place. So ideally the all information that user provided we are retrieving into separate variables, and what we are sending back to the bot is uh, say like we will try to extend this, but right now just let's keep it simple. So the message will be message. So we will just saying like you want to eat burger at restaurant in Bethesda, something simple, but we can utilize this thing and can execute our helpers to actually return the places which have burger and which are restaurant in Denver. So let's save it. Also what I'm going to do is okay, I was just planning to include a debug demo in this, but let me check if I have configured proper environments or not. No, this is something else, so I need to correct my usernames. Okay, this is good. Local, I am calling my local. Let's get my username and password. Okay, so this is my username, this is my password. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this all things over here. This type and product and place. I'm going to save it. Now let's keep debug window open, just clear out all of the logs. Okay, it's creating problem. Now we need to copy this thing. Okay, run type. Let's say place type is restaurant. The second entity is product. So type is product. Let's say it is bug. Let's add one more thing. That is destination address. Okay. Let's add destination address, that will be done. Okay. So let's run it. We don't need this response. Okay, run it. Let's check if we have any problem with the template. No, we are getting you want to eat burger at restaurant in Denver. Let's see if we got logs. Okay, we got restaurant, burger and Denver. So even if I keep it open, I will just run it, it should print the new log. Yeah, we are getting it. So this is how you can debug it, like you are running something testing over here. If you want to see logs, then you can see it. All you need to take care is like you are logged in as the same user in the backend, and when you call it even from the bot is using your same user. So we are good. So our dialog is defined. Now okay, just leave it. So I will go to bot. I will just run it. I'm running it in a debug mode, so maybe some of the things will take some time because our debugging on both my backend as well as on bot as well. So we are good. Like place dot find place intent is loaded. Now let's test if we are getting proper output. So hit the connect and see if we are connected. Yeah, so I'll just say I want to eat. So we got the message and it should ask our first question, hopefully. Okay, it's like we get some breakpoint. Okay, okay, so the first question is what kind of place you are looking for, so we are good. So I'll just type coffee and it should ask now second question, what do you want to eat. I will say coffee. And the third question is where you want to eat. Like I'll just say done. And let's the meantime just open our debug window. It should print the log over here when it is calling. So I'll just say Denver. And oops, undefined dialog response type received. So oh, because we are not defining dialog type over here. Let's fix it. So the message will be something like this, and we will define, like we'll try to end the conversation. So response will be bot dog make and conversation, that will be message, and we will return this response over here, and we will remove this array, save it. Okay, let's run it, see what we are getting. Okay, type is add conversation, data is you want to eat burger restaurant, so we are good. Let's open our debug window again 3 times. Okay, just start over the process. Let me check, nothing wrong happened with the bot. No, we are good, no errors. Let's try again. I want to eat. What kind of place you are looking for? Cafe. What do you want to eat? Of course coffee. And where you want to eat? This time let's try Bethesda. And yeah, we got the response. You want to eat coffee at cafe in Bethesda. And let's see if we got debug. No, come on. Okay, never mind, we'll just check it later. So this is very basic demo. Now what we'll be trying will be some other stuff, like where we have some information available. So say I am saying like find me restaurant, then it should skip these questions because we already first question, because we already have this information. So let's try find me restaurant, and this time directly the second question, what you want to eat, that is burger. Okay, third question then, and it should return the same response. You want to eat burger at restaurant in Denver. Now let's try with two information, find me burger restaurant. And this time directly third question, where you want to eat, then okay, you want to eat burger restaurant. Let's try with all information, find me burger restaurant in Denver. So it should directly give us a response without asking any question. You want to eat burger restaurants in Denver, so we are good. And this is how it is working. Now let's do some other interesting things. So say these are the pure questions that we are asking. Let's say education. So right now what we are asking is just like what kind of place you are looking for. So say restaurant. Now in the second question, if I want to do something like what you want to eat at restaurant, or say I user inserted like cafe, so I want to give something like what you want to eat at cafe. Or in the third thing, where you want to eat, say like burger, so what should I do? Like if so, this is the case where user have given some input and we want to use that input in our second question. So this makes little bit interesting. So what and how I can do that is, all you need to make sure you have this input. So if I will insert like product over here, and if product is not present in the input, then it will not work. But in the first question we are not asking, or we do not want any user input, that is dynamic, then it is good. So what I will do, I will just define some dynamic entity name over here. So something like it can be replaced, we can make it better, but at now you have to do it like entity dot, and it should be surrounded by percentage. So entity dot entity name, so that is a places dot destination type. Okay, let's do that. And in the second question I will replace burger with the places dot product. Sounds good. See, okay. As I have changed my questions, I need to restart my bot as well because it is written in the config. So let's go to bot, restart our bot. Let's wait to load our intents. Okay, loaded. Let's go to emulator, start over the process. Looks like it is connected. Let's say I want it. The first question should be the same. What kind of place you are looking for? So I will say cafe. So it should ask the second question, what you want to eat at cafe? So it's working. Good. And I will say coffee. So where you want to eat coffee? I will say Denver. And it should return the same answer. You want to eat coffee at cafe in Denver. So this is how we are capturing our user inputs and using that into our final dialog. So when all this information will be gathered from user, then our final dialog will be called that we are defining. It can be like multiple dialogues as well, like say I am using some location helper over here, something like I have already defined something like this. But we haven't handled that yet. So what I'm doing is I'm preparing some search object that I'm passing to location helper to get menus of that locations, which you will find like place type, product and place. It will return it. I need to prepare some other things like making some cards and prompt user for that card, and when user selects that, I will execute a second dialog. That will be my second dialog. So in that sequence you can do that, like something over here you can even ask that will be captured in the second dialog as well. That will be like pure arguments and response kind of thing. And now let me go over on code how it is working, so you guys can have some idea how it is built and how it is working. So the first thing is we are calling the bot config, that is called from, I think, let me search, server start configure bot, then yeah, dialogues, define all predefined dialogues like ping, hero card, env, release stats, and then call startup we are retrieving intents, so this will retrieve the intents which have at least one dialog. It will not retrieve intents which doesn't have any dialog, so it will retrieve intents. and in intents we are calling the get intents, and that is basically the bot config API. So in bot config API, what we are returning is show you. Let's copy the URL. Okay, should be location ID should be this one. I hope. No. Okay, invalid version staging. Okay, so this is what we are getting. So we are getting all intents, like we got 3 intents which were loaded by the bot when it was started. So we got a log like music.stop intent config, places.find place intent config, and simple intent. So these are these 3 intents. So if we go to our intent that we just defined, we are getting dialogues. So we have one dialogue and we have questions. So questions have sequence 1 2 3. Then they have a question that we have just defined, and it has entity, like for what entity we need to ask this question. So entity name, this is some simple IDs, this is entity ID of Lewis. So this is what, so what bot is doing ideally is it is loading this intent, and whenever it will get the data, so it is iterating over all of the config, and then on each intent config we have some fix. We are defining dialogues like this is initialize intent, that is our first dialog. Then for all of our questions we are pushing one another dialog, that is like ask next question. And then when we are done with all question we are pushing one other dialog, that is called final dialog. And then we are again for our dialogues like intent or dialogues we are making other dialogues. So this is how it is working. This code was pretty much done. I have just added some new stuff like this. Otherwise this code was working well and was done by people, and this is totally working fine. So let me go step by step what we are doing in init intent. So we are creating conversation data object. So conversation data is something that is available while particular conversation. So if you end conversation, this data will be automatically clear when you trigger the second intent, or yeah. So that's why we are keeping this data into conversation data, because all of data related to this conversation should be stored in conversation data. We have some other variables as well in session, like user data, that is per session data, or we can have I think dialog data as well, which will be available during dialog. When dialog is ended, yeah, over here it will be clear. So what we are doing, we are creating one intent object. In that we are storing the name of the intent, and whatever entities we get from the Lewis we are storing in entities. So say I said like I want to it, then entities array will be blank. But if I'll say find me restaurant, then restaurant entity like place type entity will be present and 2 entities will be missing. Then we are resetting current questions to 0. So what question we need to ask. Now after this dialog we are just simply calling next. So that means our next dialog will be called, which is I hope will be our ask question dialog, ask next question. So let me find where it was previously. Yeah, so first dialog was initialize intent. The second dialog is for each question, which is ask next question. So what it is doing, it is returning one function basically, and if we have some response, this question dialog is called for every question. So say we have asked the first question, what kind of place we are looking for, and user insert a restaurant. So that restaurant comes with arguments dot response variable. So we need to handle this input, and we need to store it somewhere till time we are retrieving the value of all our questions. So we have one function that is handling the last input, where we are passing response and session. What it is doing, it will first try to find intent, from the intents we have loaded. So once it finds intent, and if intent is found, it will get the last question. So last question was like, first of all it will be a 0, so we'll get like the sorry, it won't be called, like argument dot response won't be called for the first question because we don't have an input. So this intent, if there's intent is found, it will try to get the last question, and then it will return the entity name, then it will find the entity from the session, it will store the response in entity parameter. You can debug this process to see how actually it looks like, this all code, but I will just go over it. So basically what it does is, like in this variable entities, it finds the entity and it assign the user response into entity property. And if entity is not found, in most of cases it will not found because we are asking question only when this entity is not present. So it will create new entity object with name and response and will just push it to entity array. So say I say like find me restaurant, so restaurant entity was present, and when bot asked me what you want to eat, I said burger, but burger as entity was not present, so it will just push it to this array. So this array later can be passed to our final dialog with all entity values. So this is what it is doing. Then what we are doing, so this is the handling of last questions response. So what we did, we just stored our last questions value provided by user in our session. Now for the next question, it will try to find the entity if that entity is present. So say I say like find me burger. Burger was the second question, but we have that available, so it will try to find that from our entities array. If entity is found, then it will just increase the index of current question and will just pass control to the next dialog with the entity value. That will be basically this dialog only. And if that entity is not present, then it will prompt the user with the question, and before that this question is passed to this little function that will replace the any dynamic value that is present. So just like we did, like we enter some entity values that will dynamic that we want to use in question, then it will just replace it and then will pass to prompt. So bot will ask the question, and when this question will be asked and user provide input, it will again call this dialog with this response, and we will handle that output. So by this process, once all dialogues are done, it will pass the control to the next dialog. That is our call final dialog. So what we are doing over here is we are first handling the response of our last question that was just provided, and then we are just passing control to the next dialog. And then we are passing entities over here with the session, conversation data, intent.entities. So this control will be passed to make dialog because that is our next dialog process from here. Yeah, over here. So intent.dialog.for each make dialog. And what this dialog does is it handles this all things that is too custom right now. I will not go over it, but basically it is calling a dialog on the backend. So it will call the dialog that was just retrieved here, id number 122, and it will pass the id and arguments. These arguments will be the arguments that is passed by the call final dialog, so it will have entities. And when the final, it will go on the backend, it will call the API like Lewis bot dialogs call id and call. It pass the argument. Whenever some response is coming, based on the response type, it is rendering the thing. If it is prompt, then it will ask the question. If it is next, it will simply pass the data to the control to the next dialog. If it's message, attachment, attachments, and conversation, or just simply will say undefined dialog response type recipe. So this is how right now it is working. So basically you can define your questions per intent, or here in the edit question per intent, these questions will be asked to the user if they are not present, and it will gather all of the values, and when values are gathered, it will just start calling your dialogues whatever you have defined over here. And yeah, this will run a little bit slow, but yeah, I think that's it. And this little branch is right now I have done some modification in some files to call my local. If you want to set up it, just check out my branch, but I had a doubt like you need to call my local branch as well for backend. That will be very tedious to set up. So but yeah, I will just try to deploy this branch as a bot as well as like my backend branch somewhere, maybe on alpha, so bot and this alpha branch can communicate. And yeah, that's it. If you have any question, then I'll be available on Slack. Thank you.